I always tell you guys to have examples of what you're talking about. So I just want to give you a couple of simple examples to think about Emerson and this initial idea that man is his own star. That again, it's a little sexist, but people are their own star. You're the center of the universe. You don't have to revolve around anybody else. You got to do your own thing. Just to give you a quick example as we go forward, imagine being a painter and nobody likes your paintings. Emerson would tell you, you're your own star. You're the center. So don't worry about what other people think. Don't because are you going to rely on their opinion of you and change your art based on what they want, or are you going to be self-reliant and do what you know is right? You know your painting is better if you do it like this, and even if people make fun of you, you know the painting is better in here. And so you're going to ignore. You're the center of the solar system. You don't revolve around these people, and so you're going to do your painting your way. And then of course, you know the story would go that you didn't listen to the crowd and all those people, and you were so misunderstood, but later on people recognized your genius and you became a great artist. This is a famous story about artists, right? That people don't like their work while they're alive, but then 100 years later people are like, this is amazing. And how did they do it? They didn't listen to other people who complained about their art. They did what they wanted to do, right? They followed their own. They are their own star. They follow their own star, and they're the center. And they didn't listen to the haters, and they just did their own thing, and it worked out in the end. And so that's a famous story about art. That's told, and you'll hear musicians tell that story, and painters tell that story, and all kinds of arts will tell a story something like that. These great geniuses who nobody appreciated and they refused to change, but they were right and they shouldn't have changed because they were geniuses and all the people telling them what to do were idiots. But there's a dark side to thinking that you don't need other people and their opinions. So, for example, people are asked in this country to pay taxes, and the taxes are supposed to pay for things that make life better for everybody. Right, that's the idea. Is that you pay your taxes, and then people use the taxes to do things like build roads and I don't know, pick up the trash and clean up garbage and do all these the things that make the world a better place to live in. But some people, for example, will be like, well, wait a minute, I'm paying. One of the things you pay taxes for is school, right? And some people are going, well, wait a minute, I don't have any kids. Why do I have to pay for somebody else's kids to go to school? And so they get mad and they don't want to pay for taxes because why? Because the tax money is being used to care for everybody. And they're like, everybody? Those people have nothing to do with me. Why am I paying taxes for school systems when I don't even have any children? I shouldn't have to pay taxes for that. But you see, but like, that's how we end up living in a country with a lot of stupid people, is because people refuse to pay for school to be nice. And they don't want to pay their taxes. They don't want to pay for schools. Rich people in particular don't want to pay their taxes and don't want to pay for schools. And then the school system is not so good. And after 20, 30, 40 years of that, you end up with a country full of stupid people who vote for stupid things and believe stupid racist bullshit. So and the same thing. We could also do healthcare, right? The same thing for healthcare. Everybody should have in a lot of parts of Europe, everybody in the country has like basically free healthcare. But in America, people are like, why should I? Because where does it come from? It comes from taxes. So a lot of people in America are like, why should I pay my taxes so somebody else can go to the hospital? Because you're supposed to care about other people, right? I don't know how to explain why. You're supposed to care about other people. So the problem is Emerson cuts both ways, right? On the one hand, relying on yourself is a great way. Like you have the power in here. Trust yourself. You know the right answer. You are your own star. You are the center of the universe. But on the other hand, I'm thinking of the consider objections. But people that would object to Emerson would point out that the problem is that Emerson causes you not to give a shit about your fellow countrymen, your fellow country people, but your fellow Americans, because you're like, I'm my own star, I'm the center, and this has a very bad effect on the country as a whole, because you end up with a lot of selfish people who are doing their own thing. And that's one of the reasons why, if you've ever looked around and feel like society isn't working correctly, that's why you wear a mask during COVID, not to protect your own health, but to protect other people's health. And then a lot of people are like, I don't care about other people, I'm not wearing a mask. So as we go through Emerson, these are the two things I want you to remember. Sometimes Emerson's awesome because following your own star and your own self-knowledge and your own power is amazing. But sometimes Emerson's really dangerous because you can, if you do it wrong, you can end up only caring about yourself and not really giving a shit about other people, and that results in a society that doesn't work, because the whole concept of society is we're supposed to all be working together. And if you're an Emerson person, you might just be thinking of yourself because, as he says, man is his own star. So those are the two things as we go through. You got to keep that in mind. Emerson's real easy to do considering objections on, because pretty much everything he says is sometimes good in some situations, like painting, sometimes bad in other situations, like healthcare. Okay, let's get started on Emerson. Okay, let's see what we got here. Camera's having a little trouble focusing. All right. There is a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself for better, for worse, as is his portion. That though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given him to till. The power which resides in him, let's start with that for a sentence. So he says every person learns eventually, right? There's a time in every man's, when he says man, he means person. A little sexist. There is a time in every person's education when that person arrives at the conviction, they believe that envy is ignorance, right? And envy is like when you wish you had what other people had. He says that's stupid. Imitation is suicide. If you're copying somebody else, you're not being your own star. You're rotating around someone else. If you're envying someone else, like you wish that you were like, you're like, oh man, I wish I had their life. You're rotating around some other person, not you. Right? If you're copying someone, if you're imitating them, you're rotating around someone else and not you. And it's almost like suicide because you're not centering yourself on yourself. You're centering yourself on someone else and their needs and their life and their decisions and their ideas. So he says that in a person's education, he must take himself for better or worse as is his portion. Take himself. You got to accept yourself. You got to just accept who you are and don't try to be someone else, meaning, oh man, I envy them. I wish I had their life. Don't copy them. Oh, I'm going to be just like them. It says you don't do either of those things. You got to accept yourself. You got to take yourself for better, for worse. This is his portion. Just you're good. Some of you is good. Some of you is bad. Just accept it. That though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to him to till. So it's a metaphor because he talks about how, look, there's a lot of kernels of corn, right? There's a lot of food on the ground there's a lot of food that you can eat. But he says the only food that really matters is the one that you got through toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to him to till. It's a metaphor. The metaphor is there's a lot of food you could eat, but the only food that matters is the food you worked on and made yourself. Toil is hard work. So it's only through the food that you grow yourself, that you cook yourself, that's the food that really matters. Because otherwise, you're getting your food from other people and you're not being your own star, right? You're not following your own path. Because this whole essay is self-reliance. So just to give you a stupid example, Emerson would tell you that if you're eating takeout food all the time, then you're not being self-reliant because you're letting other people cook for you, and that the right way to live your life is to cook your own food. He's actually talking about growing your own food, which is even more intense. But again, this is a central idea: is that sort of the well-lived life is the one where you're self-reliant. You don't rely on other people to cook your food. You know how to cook your food. You don't rely on other people to fix your tire in your car. You know how to fix a tire in your car. You don't rely on other people to, right? This is his big point. Self-reliance means you learn that what really matters is doing it yourself with your own hands because you should be the center. When you have to rely on other people, that means you're weak, I guess. I think that's crazy because how can one person do everything themselves? You're going to need help sometimes. But Emerson's idea is that you should do everything for yourself. And again, it has a lot of good and bad aspects in it. All right, I'll pick it up in the next video.